In the world of Hollywood, where power, influence, and public image mean everything, there are stories that shake the very foundation of how fame works. And right now, we are watching one of those rare moments unfold before our eyes. This is not just about a movie star or a glamorous red carpet. This is about Secret's control strategy and the struggle to hold on to an empire that appears to be cracking. When we look at the headlines, they tell us only a fraction of what is truly happening behind closed doors. What the cameras capture is carefully rehearsed, but what comes out in court filings, leaked messages, and whispered reports from insiders paints an entirely different picture. The reason this story matters is because it is no longer about just one celebrity or one scandal. It is about the system of protection, spin, and calculated silence that Hollywood has relied on for decades. Audiences are demanding authenticity. The public is no longer satisfied with carefully crafted images. And when the truth starts slipping through the cracks, it changes everything. This is the moment where reputations are tested, alliances are exposed, and the balance of power begins to shift. In the world of Hollywood, where glitter and glamour dominate the headlines, it is often easy to forget that behind every red carpet photo op, every viral interview, and every smiling appearance, there is a much deeper story unfolding. And the ongoing situation surrounding Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Justin Baldoni, and the unexpected involvement of Taylor Swift has proven to be one of the most layered and complex stories in recent memory. What started as what many thought would simply be another round of Hollywood gossip has grown into something that cuts into the very core of how celebrity culture operates, how public narratives are shaped, and how even the most beloved stars can find themselves under an unforgiving spotlight. And as the days turn into weeks, the audience watching from around the world has become more and more invested, because this is no longer just about a legal battle or a professional dispute. It has become a reflection of power, relationships, influence, and the ways in which the entertainment industry polishes, or at times buries the truth. The very first moments of this saga felt almost routine. A lawsuit here, a sharp headline, there whispers in entertainment columns about disagreements behind the scenes. But what truly captivated the public was not just the existence of conflict. It was the cast of characters involved. Blake Lively, long celebrated as America's sweetheart, with a carefully curated image of elegance, wit, and authenticity, suddenly found herself on the receiving end of scrutiny that few could have imagined. Ryan Reynolds, whose career has thrived on humor, charm, and relatability, suddenly became a secondary figure pulled into the storm, not as the leading man, but as someone trying to hold his ground while his partner's decisions drew louder and louder questions. And then there was Justin Baldoni, a figure who until recently, many casual fans associated primarily with heartfelt projects and uplifting messages, but who now stood as both adversary and challenger in a narrative that had grown bigger than either he or Blake could have ever intended. The real shockwave, however, came when the possibility of Taylor Swift being indirectly tied to the story surfaced. Her name alone was enough to ignite the internet, because when Taylor Swift is even whispered about in relation to drama, it magnifies the intensity instantly given her global presence and the fiercely loyal community she has built over the years. Suddenly, what might have been a typical Hollywood dispute began to look like something much more like a cultural phenomenon. And as fans, commentators, and industry insiders began dissecting every statement, every leak, and every rumor, the central story became less about who might win a lawsuit, and more about what these developments revealed about the mechanisms of Hollywood itself. People began to ask themselves important questions about loyalty, about the price of fame, and about what truly happens when personal relationships become entangled with public perception. The fascinating part of this saga is how quickly it blurred the line between private and public moments, because in today's world, there is hardly any separation between the two for major celebrities. On one hand, you have court filings, lawyers making strategic moves, and journalists publishing official reports. But on the other hand, you have social media posts, fans deciphering cryptic messages, and viral clips being shared in seconds across millions of screens. Every subtle gesture, every pause in a sentence, every glance during an interview gets reinterpreted through a lens of speculation, which means that for Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, no moment is truly just casual anymore. Even a night out for dinner can suddenly spiral into trending hashtags with people debating whether it signals unity or tension. And for Justin Baldoni, every professional appearance carries added weight, because people are not only evaluating his projects, but also linking his every move Back to the courtroom, and the larger narrative that has unfolded, this merging of the professional and the personal has created a climate where no statement is seen as innocent and no silence is taken lightly. And perhaps that is why the involvement of Taylor Swift's name created such aftershocks, because her relationship with her fans has always been built on carefully chosen words and deliberate storytelling. So when rumors suggested that text messages or communications involving her might surface, it immediately triggered a sense of anticipation mixed with anxiety. What would those messages reveal? Would they simply be casual exchanges misunderstood out of context? Or would they hold weight that could shift the balance of the case entirely? It is that uncertainty that has kept the audience glued to the updates, with every headline dissected as if it were a lyric, hiding a double meaning in a song. The longer this has gone on, the clearer it has become that this is not just a battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. It is a mirror being held up to celebrity culture at large, because while fans may outwardly enjoy the entertainment value of following such a dramatic narrative on a deeper level, it has also forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about how quickly public opinion can shift, about how narratives are constructed and deconstructed, and about how fragile the carefully maintained balance between fame and privacy truly is. One of the reasons this story resonates so strongly with audiences is because everyone has at some point experienced moments of misunderstanding, betrayal, or conflict. Albeit on a much smaller scale, when they see stars like Blake Ryan or Justin go through it, the events feel magnified yet oddly relatable. It prompts questions like, how would I handle being accused of something I didn't do? How would I respond if a close relationship became entangled in public drama? How would I feel if a private conversation suddenly risked being made public? And those questions draw people in, emotionally making them feel connected, not just as spectators, but almost as participants in the unfolding drama. The sheer unpredictability of each development adds to that connection. One day, reports suggest that the tide is turning in Blake's favor. The next day, whispers emerge that Justin's legal team has gained traction. Then there is a sudden leak or a strategic move from the lawyers that throws everything into question again. And each cycle brings another wave of social media debates, another round of think pieces, another late-night comedy segment poking fun at the absurdity of it all. Yet beneath the humor and the memes, there is an undeniable weight to what is. At stake, reputations are fragile, careers can be redirected, and trust once broken is nearly impossible to fully restore. And perhaps that is why this story has captured not just gossip outlets, but mainstream attention as well. It represents more than entertainment. It represents the very human cost of life lived under the spotlight. The story that keeps unfolding around Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni is not just a headline for a week. It has turned into one of the most unpredictable dramas Hollywood has seen in years, and the deeper we dive into it, the more layers are revealed, making the audience question who is really holding the truth and who is spinning the narrative to protect their image. Because every new filing, every court mention, and every leaked insider detail gives a slightly different angle to the same saga. And when fans start to put those pieces together, the picture forming is one that has the potential to reshape how we look at celebrity influence, power dynamics, and the lengths people will go to maintain control in a world where perception often matters more than facts. When the court first acknowledged that certain text messages and conversations could be relevant, the shockwaves traveled far beyond the courtroom. Suddenly, what was once dismissed as speculation gained credibility, and the possibility that those communications might eventually be seen by the public raised questions not only about privacy, but also about accountability. Because if those messages truly contradict the polished public images that these stars have curated, then the fallout could be enormous. And what makes it even more captivating is that these developments are happening in real time, with millions of people following every twist and turn as if it were a scripted series. Except this time the script is being written by real choices, real mistakes, and real consequences. Insiders close to the situation have hinted that there is more tension behind the scenes than anyone is openly admitting, suggesting that alliances are not as stable as they appear, and that even friendships and long-term partnerships are being tested under the weight of the case. When observers look at how carefully statements are worded, how quickly certain narratives spread through entertainment outlets, and how swiftly denials are issued, it becomes clear that there is a sophisticated strategy unfolding to control the narrative. But as history has shown, controlling a narrative becomes far more difficult once courts and evidence are involved. Because courts operate on standards that are not always friendly to celebrity branding. They deal with facts, documentation, and credibility, And those elements cannot be reshaped as easily as a press release or an Instagram post. That is why legal experts have started to point out the stakes here, noting that reputations are not just on the line. Careers, endorsements, and even personal relationships could face damage if the evidence does not align with the polished images the public has been fed for years. And that brings us to an important aspect, which is how fans and the wider public are responding. The longer this saga goes on, the more divided people become. Some believe that these stars have built their lives on carefully crafted illusions, and that it is only natural for cracks to appear, while others still hold out hope that the truth will vindicate them, and that the chaos is merely a misunderstanding. But what cannot be denied is that the intrigue is growing. People are not just watching casually, they are dissecting timelines. They are comparing statements, they are questioning motives. And in doing so, they are becoming active participants in the unfolding drama, which makes this case not only a legal battle, but also a cultural moment, because how the public interprets it will influence how much power celebrities can wield moving forward. What makes this even more intense is the way Hollywood insiders are reacting. Many of them are not publicly commenting. But whispers from within the industry suggest that people are nervous because if someone as established and seemingly untouchable as Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds can face this level of scrutiny, it opens the door for others to be examined just as closely, and that shift could change the unspoken rules of how power is managed in the industry. We have already seen journalists digging deeper, influencers posting detailed breakdowns, and legal analysts making predictions, all of which feed into the cycle of speculation and pressure for more information. And every time a small detail leaks, it reignites the conversation, keeping the spotlight firmly fixed on those at the center and raising the question of whether they can withstand this level of attention without cracks showing even further. Meanwhile, the silence from certain quarters speaks volumes, because in Hollywood, silence is rarely just silence. It is usually a strategy, either a pause to regroup, a way to avoid adding fuel to the fire, or an indication that something bigger is being prepared behind the scenes. And that is why so many people are watching closely, not just for what is said, but for what is not said. Because sometimes absence of words reveals more than statements ever could. Legal experts have explained that the introduction of private communications into this case could change the entire trajectory. If those communications undermine credibility, then the ripple effect could extend far beyond the courtroom into negotiations, endorsements, and even long-term projects that depend on trust and positive public image. The fascinating part is how different the stakes are for each individual involved. Because while one person might be fighting for vindication, another might be fighting to protect a brand, and another might simply be trying to limit collateral damage. Those competing goals create tension. And when tension is this high, mistakes become more likely, and every mistake only adds another chapter to the unfolding saga. One of the most striking aspects of the public reaction is how people are no longer content to simply watch. They are demanding accountability. They want transparency. They want to see whether the reality matches the carefully built fantasy, and in this new era of social media, those demands cannot be ignored because silence leaves a vacuum, and that vacuum will be filled by speculation and interpretation, which often become just as powerful as facts. The longer the case stretches out, the more people begin to ask how far this will go. Will it end with a quiet settlement? Will it lead to explosive revelations that permanently alter careers? Or will it simply fizzle out, leaving behind only speculation? Whatever the outcome, one truth remains. This saga has already changed the way people view these celebrities. Because once the curtain has been pulled back even slightly, it is impossible to see them in quite the same light again. And that is the kind of shift that lingers long after the headlines fade away. And for fans and critics alike, the story becomes not only about legal battles, but about trust, about whether the people they admired truly lived up to the image they projected, or whether it was all just a carefully constructed performance. The conversation around this case refuses to die down, and in fact, it has only grown more intense with each passing day, because what we are seeing unfold is not just a dispute between two celebrities, but a reflection of how power, image, and influence operate in Hollywood and beyond. People are not just interested in the legal filings or the court dates, they are fascinated by the human side of it. The whispered betrayals, the strategic leaks to the press, the body language in courtrooms, the quiet unfollows on social media, and the way carefully crafted statements get dissected for hidden meaning. This is why audiences everywhere cannot look away. It feels like we are witnessing a real-life drama with stakes higher than any scripted film. And in this third act of the unfolding story, the spotlight is now firmly on how each move has consequences that ripple far outside of the courtroom. One of the most striking things is how unpredictable each development has become. One day, the narrative seems to lean in one direction, and the next it pivots entirely, sometimes because of a leaked text, sometimes because of a single line in a filing, and sometimes simply because of the way a lawyer phrases a response. It is a reminder that the truth in legal conflicts is rarely straightforward. It is often layered, complicated, and interpreted differently by different sides. This unpredictability is part of why the audience remains so engaged. Everyone is playing detective, piecing together fragments, trying to guess what will come next. And yet the truth may only fully surface at the very end, if at all, because many settlements and judgments never reveal the full extent of what happened behind closed doors. What also keeps people talking is the way other celebrities appear to circle around the story, carefully distancing themselves or cautiously weighing in without saying too much. Hollywood has always been about alliances and networks, and when one high-profile figure is in trouble, the reaction of others can be just as telling as the story itself. Will they stand by publicly, or will they remain silent? Will they lend quiet support behind the scenes, or make subtle moves to protect their own image? Every silence becomes a message. Every casual remark gets magnified by the press and fans alike. It is a reminder of the delicate balance stars must strike when one of their own faces turmoil, because the court of public opinion can be as unforgiving as the legal system itself. Another fascinating aspect is how legal language itself has become entertainment filings that might once have been dry technical documents are now read like thriller novels. Fans and media outlets analyze each word, speculate on each reference, and highlight the phrases that seem most explosive. Lawyers who once operated in the shadows are now household names, with fans debating their strategies as if they were sports coaches. It is a surreal blending of law and spectacle, where legal maneuvers become episodes in a larger story arc, and the lawyers themselves become characters with their own followings and reputations. This blurring of law entertainment and celebrity culture has created a situation where the audience is as invested in the behind-the-scenes chess game as they are in the outcome itself. What makes this even more gripping is how reputation management has become as central as the legal case itself in today's digital age. A single viral clip or trending hashtag can reshape perception faster than any court ruling. This means that both sides are fighting on two fronts, the legal and the public, and often the strategies intersect in ways that are impossible to fully control. One wrong word, one misunderstood gesture, one poorly timed leak can set off a storm that overshadows everything else. This pressure is immense, and it is why so many observers describe this case not only as a legal battle, but as a masterclass in modern crisis management and media strategy at the same time. Ordinary fans continue to play a role in shaping the story. The speed with which clip statements or documents spread across platforms is breathtaking, and the interpretations people attach to them fuel the narrative further. One fan theory leads to another. One screenshot becomes evidence for thousands of tweets, and suddenly a casual remark made months ago is reframed as a crucial clue. It is a dynamic that no public figure can fully control, and one that makes the audience feel like they are participants in the story, not just spectators. This participatory element is part of why the story has become larger than life, because every viewer feels invested in discovering what lies beneath the polished surface. While all of this unfolds, one cannot ignore the emotional toll on those directly involved. Behind the glamorous images and public statements are human beings navigating an exhausting maze of lawyers, meetings, media headlines, and personal emotions. The strain of constantly having your words, actions, and even silences dissected must be enormous. And while some might assume that fame cushions the impact, the reality is that scrutiny at this level can be isolating and overwhelming. We often forget that for every headline, there are sleepless nights, tough conversations with family and friends, and the heavy weight of wondering what comes next. It is this human side that quietly resonates with audiences because people understand stress, heartbreak, and uncertainty, even if the stage here is far grander and more public. Another layer adding intrigue is the way past actions now resurface. Moments from years ago suddenly take on new significance when reframed in the current narrative. Interviews that once seemed lighthearted now look like foreshadowing. Posts from social media accounts long forgotten are dug up for clues, and comments once brushed aside become evidence in the collective imagination. This retroactive lens adds to the drama, because it creates a sense that the story has been unfolding longer than anyone realized, and that perhaps the seeds of today's conflict were planted long ago. The deeper people dig, the more convinced they become that there are hidden truths, waiting to be uncovered. And this search for hidden meaning is one of the engines driving the obsession forward. It is also impossible to overlook the financial stakes behind everything when public reputations are tied to projects' endorsements. And brand partnerships, the fallout of a legal battle extends far beyond personal pride. Entire careers and business empires can shift based on outcomes. And that is why investors, studios, and advertisers watch these cases with as much intensity. As fans, their decisions about future collaborations may hinge on the way narratives unfold, and this financial dimension adds yet another layer of drama, because it means that every development carries potential real-world consequences measured in millions of dollars in addition to reputation and influence at this stage of the saga. Many are beginning to speculate about possible endings. Will there be a dramatic trial where everything is laid bare, or will the case quietly settle with carefully worded statements that leave much unsaid? Will the public ever know the full truth? Or will this story join the many others in Hollywood that fade from memory? With unanswered questions, the possibilities are endless, and that uncertainty keeps people talking because speculation is as compelling as fact when it comes to celebrity drama. And for every scenario imagined, there are just as many counter-arguments. What seems likely one week becomes impossible the next. What seems impossible suddenly feels inevitable. This cycle of shifting possibilities has become the rhythm of the entire story, a rhythm that shows no signs of slowing down, in fact. As more time passes, the case seems to gain momentum, not lose it, perhaps because with every delay, anticipation builds further, and audiences grow even more invested in seeing what will finally emerge. And so we find ourselves at a moment where the legal case is only half the story. The other half is the conversation it sparks. The way fans, journalists, lawyers, and celebrities themselves engage with it. The way narratives are constructed, deconstructed, and reconstructed in real time. And the way the lines between fact, rumor, strategy, and storytelling blur in ways that make it almost impossible to separate them fully. This is not just about what happens in court. It is about how culture consumes conflict, how audiences shape and reshape perception, and how in the modern age a legal battle can transform into an epic saga that feels both real and cinematic at the same time. As this chapter of the story reaches its current peak, one thing becomes absolutely clear. The image of untouchable Hollywood power is no longer as solid as it once appeared. The conversations that once stayed hidden in private rooms are now spilling into the open, and the carefully built reputations that relied on silence are now being tested by the weight of truth. What we are seeing is more than just a courtroom battle or a public dispute. We are witnessing the collision of perception and reality. The world has changed, and so has the way audiences respond to those in power. What might have been controlled through publicists and polished interviews is now challenged instantly by voices, online experts breaking down every move, and fans dissecting every word. The outcome may take time to fully unfold, but the damage to the old system is already visible. When the spotlight shines this brightly, it reveals more than intended, and that exposure will continue to shape careers, friendships, and legacies for years to come. In the end, this is not just about one celebrity. It is about a shift in how truth, power, and fame collide. And the story is far from over.